We are going to continue in week 2 of our January series of Above All Else. Last week we looked from Romans chapter 3, verse 27, and we looked at what do you want most? And that really started dealing with our pride, our ego, the things that we are selfishly drawn to and that we point ourselves towards, as Paul says, what of boasting then? And then he said that it's excluded. So last week was the question of what do you want most as we look at this pursuit of God, and do we really have Him in our lives on the place where He is above all else? The question we're going to be entertaining and searching biblically today is, what has your heart? What has your heart? And we're going to be going to Matthew chapter 6. Now, this is going to be the section of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and we're going to be taking a particular passage out of this, verses 19 through 24. So go ahead and get that pulled up or turn to that as you can. So what has your heart? I think that's a good inflection, kind of looking inwardly for us to do a little bit of inventory type question. Simple, but profound whenever we mind the depths of that, when we really begin to gaze into that question and what that really means. That really can for me, it was convicting, but it was also comforting at the same time that Jesus addresses this and He tells us what we need to do. In order to answer this question, I wouldn't need to know just your theology. I wouldn't need to see your church attendance. I wouldn't need to have a moral or a political conversation with you about what you value. Really, there's 3 things that as we examine them, we can see that they have our heart. First thing we need to examine is our checkbook. The second that we need to examine is our calendars. And the third thing we need to check is our conversations. All 3 of those will reveal to you very quickly what has your heart. Where you spend your resources, that's an indicator of where your heart is. What you spend your time pursuing and doing and what fills your calendar, that will also reveal in part what you're doing and what has your heart. And also the conversations that we have, the way that we handle ourselves in our words and in our conversations, that reveals to us what has our heart. But let's read Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 through 20, because we're going to see today that the glory of God really demands not just our desires, but it demands our treasure. It demands our loyalty and our devotion as well. Matthew 6, verses 19 through 20. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve 2 masters, for they will either hate the one and love the other, or they'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. You see, God, in this passage, Jesus is not asking us what we say that we treasure. He's challenging what we actually store up, what we're actually devoted to, those things that we worry about, the things that we're willing to compromise on. Jesus isn't asking us for our answer of what we say here. He wants us to look inwardly and answer the question of what has our loyalty? What has our devotion? Because ultimately, that will be what has your heart? Now, I want to break this passage into 3 sections. And we're going to stay within the confines of this passage together today, so go ahead and keep those open because we're going to be referencing back to this in Matthew 6. And the first thing I want us to do is I'm going to reread a couple passages, starting with verse 19, and we're going to talk about the fact that you were created for something eternal. As we are pursuing God, as we are moving through this life, and as we're examining this question of what has our heart, Scripture quickly, and Jesus quickly reminds us that we were created for something eternal. Let's look at, starting with verse 19 again. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, or where thieves break in and steal. You see, this is not sage advice coming from our Savior. This is not an ancient proverb that he's speaking. This is not a fortune cookie that's opening up and giving us good insight into what we should do. Chinese food sounds pretty good right now, I'm not going to lie to you. Talk about fortune cookies, this is what happens. This is a command. Lay up treasures in heaven. Not think about it, not consider it. It would be good. Lay up treasures in heaven, and do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. See, you were never created to be sustained by temporal things. You were never created to be filled by things of this world. Because when we are filled with things of this world, what inevitably happens? We get empty again, right? Like, the filling things of this world only last moments. Now, granted, some of them are longer than others, but it's always a momentary filling of temporal, earthly things. You were created for eternal things, to lay up. Don't lay up our treasures. Don't value these things so much. Don't put first priority on these things on earth, where moth and rust and thieves can affect it. We're made for eternal things. And the cycle that we find ourselves in whenever we are trying to be fulfilled by temporal, earthly things is that we're filled with them and it feels good until it doesn't. Then it starts to feel really bad, and we get discouraged. We get defeated. That thing that made you feel so good just moments ago now is an empty void inside of you that's hollow, and you're discouraged and defeated because of it. And you want to know what follows that? Shame. Because then we get to looking back on how dumb am I that I relied on this to fulfill me. You see, it's a perpetual cycle. So we get into this fulfillment, then we get into discouragement and defeat, then we get into shame, and then what we begin to do is try to find something that masks the shame, so we go for this temporal feel-good yet again, and the cycle just starts over again. Anybody ever experienced that? You see, it's about being eternally minded. I love where he talks about where neither rost nor must can destroy. That's where we're going today, apparently. Neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. You see, this would have been painting a very vivid picture in the first century. Because if you think about moths, I mean, if I got up here and I told you, it was like, listen, you need to be careful of moths, rust, and thieves. Moths? Yeah, granted, they're a little weird, but I mean, honestly, like we got mothballs, we set them out. We take care of these things. Bada bing, bada boom, it's done. You see, but in the first century, they didn't have that. And they understood that a moth infestation over time would lead to a slow decay of everything that they owned. Can you think of anything like that that we may face today? That maybe initially it's not that bad. Maybe initially up front it's not too terrible. But then over time, it slowly decays at us and who we are. Then you look at rust. Now, rust is still a problem. Any of you Bondo experts out there, you know what I'm talking about. Like, rust can be a problem. If rust sets in, then that is it's happening. It is a decay that is not going to cease. But I asked myself this question earlier this week: is rust really that big of a deal in my? It's kind of like quicksand, right? As I was growing up, I thought quicksand was going to be a far bigger problem as an adult than what it turned out to be. 80s movies lied to me. It's kind of like the rust thing. Yeah, we recognize that rust is a problem. Yeah, that's an issue if you get it. Okay, it's not a great thing. But you know what? If I've got a car that's eaten up with rust, you know what I do? I'll go see Billy Murray. I'll trade it in. I'll get a new one. It's like we don't put a whole lot of worry. But I wonder if there's other things in our life that, maybe these careers that take us away from our family, maybe this job that pulls us away from our faith, maybe it's these things that compromise us in our relationship with the Lord, that if we don't take care of it, then inevitably it's going to cause destruction. And then thieves. We look at thieves. Thieves are still a problem today. There's no denying that whatsoever. But we have a one-word fix for this: insurance. Yes, if you experience a theft, yes, it's traumatic. Yes, there's things that you have to process through emotionally, no doubt. But we carry property insurance. If you rent, renter's insurance, homeowner's insurance. I mean, if these things happen to you that include this theft, so yes, none of us want to see this immediate theft of something that comes about. But you know what? If it does, then I'm calling my insurance agent. We're getting the claim started, and eventually it will work itself out. That couch that was stolen will be replaced. I wonder what those areas in our lives are that we put so much security and anchored our stability so much in, that if they were immediately taken from us, that we would completely collapse. You see, I'm not saying that these things aren't important, that the things of this world that we face and that we do and that we find ourselves having to invest in, I'm not saying that they're not important. I'm just saying that you were created for eternal things. You were created more than just for this world. As we look at verse 22, we're going to see another thing that it does. It reveals to us, your eye reveals the direction of your soul. Your eye reveals the direction of your soul. Verse 22, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. See, Jesus changes metaphors here. Catch this. He changes metaphors. He does not change the message. This is still very much about our treasure and what we value and where our heart is. You see, in the Jewish culture and in the tradition and in that time, the eye meant that it was what you focused on. It's what you prioritized. It's what you made paramount in your life. That was your value. And what Jesus says here is he breaks it down. And I love it whenever teaching gets simplistic, because I require simplistic teaching for me to understand things. Jesus says, if you've got a good eye, that's good. If you've got a bad eye, that's bad. And I think that as we search Scripture, we find out that a good eye in our lives means that we are God-centered. It means that we flow in generosity. It truly means that through all of our fallibility and faults and failures, we still want to see God glorified above all else. But if we've got a bad eye, then we're self-centered. We're greedy. And it's all about us getting the glory, us getting the applause and the lauding and everyone's attention being on us, because the eye is the lamp of the body. What you focus on, what your eye focuses on, shapes you. It will inevitably determine what you value, what you pursue, what you put your energies into, what your affections are set to. Your eye determines that. And are you looking at things of the light, of good, of things that are God-centered, are generous, and that bring Him glory? Or do you find yourself falling into that fleshly trap of, listen, at the end of the day, I want to talk about me. Right? This is about me. I'm greedy. I'm self-centered. I want glory. And I want to see that happening in my life. Because Hebrews 12:2 tells us to fix our eyes upon Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. Church, you don't just stumble into generosity. That's an intentional act. You don't accidentally step into doing kingdom work and serving first others, because all of our natural inclinations is to do the opposite of that, and we have to fight that. And lastly, this morning, in verse 24, you cannot serve two masters. Cannot serve two masters. No one can serve two masters, for either they will hate the one and love the other, or they will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Jesus names money here, but let's drill a little deeper and understand that He's talking about idols. And money, yes, is an idol for us. But I think that we could look at some other things that would serve as idols as well. I think comfort. I think security. I think our need of being approved, having approval of others is an idol. I think peace, calm. I think our controlling things can be an idol. To borrow from something from last week, God will refuse to be a consultant in your life. He is king. He is on the throne. He will not take second place to anything else. He doesn't need to be a consultant. And matter of fact, there doesn't even need to be anything that's a close second to Him. Again, not saying that security, comfort, and our jobs and our careers and all of these things, I'm not saying that they're evil. But I am saying that they don't make safe masters. They do not make good masters. The heart of Christ's message in this passage this morning is this: Jesus isn't after your money or any of the other idols that we've just talked about. He's not out headhunting those idols. He wants your heart. That's what Jesus wants. That's what He desires. And see, in this passage, this message, this isn't a message of guilt, but it's a message of clarity. Jesus is helping to take the lens of our lives and what we're looking through and adjust it. You know, the eye doctor thing. Let's not talk about the eye doctor evil torture device that they put you in that puffs the air in your eye. Anybody else try to outguess that thing? Like you're sitting there and you're like, it's happening now. And they're like, you got to stay forward. You got to keep your eye open. It's like, listen, we both got jobs to do here, all right? But whenever they put the mask in front of you and they start going 1 or 2, 1 or 2, 1 or 2, tell me which is clearer. I see that is what God is doing with us in this moment, is He's challenging our hearts of what does your heart want? What is going on with it? Where is it? What do you want with it? And He's saying, here's this, here's this. Let me make this a little bit more clear. Let me make this a little bit more clear. Because as we set our hearts to Jesus, He will get more clearly evident in our lives. And what we'll find is that the more clearly that we see Him, the more that we value Him above all else. Praise Team, if you would please come back up this morning. I want to read something to us today as we get ready to head into our time of reflection. And I titled this, A Better Treasure, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Church, here's the good news, but don't mistake it for soft news. Jesus never asks you to release what's killing you without offering what will finally make you alive. 2 Corinthians 8:9 says, though He was rich, yet for your sake He became poor, so that you by His poverty might become rich. The Son of God did not cling to glory. He did not protect His status. He did not preserve His comfort. He emptied Himself. He stepped down. He paid in full. Not so you could add Him to an already crowded heart, but so He could take the throne of your heart. Jesus didn't come to be our assistants. He came to be our King. So let's stop asking small, safe questions. The question is not, do you have money? The question is, what do you panic over losing? What do you protect at all cost? What do you obey without argument? Because whatever you fear losing, most already owns you. And hear this clearly. Jesus is not threatened by your idols, but He will not share His rule with them. He stands before you, not begging, not bargaining, not condemning, but inviting you into a freedom that only comes when lesser treasures are laid down. A treasure that cannot be stolen, a security that cannot collapse, a joy that does not expire is found in Him. And above all else, He alone is worthy. I want to invite you to remain seated this morning, and we're going to take a moment and we're going to worship in song, and I want you to reflect on not only the words of this song, but also the content of this message and what Jesus spoke to us here out of Matthew chapter 6.